Get all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight Black Mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies, and welcome to a very special edition of the Midnight Black Mass. I am your host, the Rev. Dan Wilson, alongside my partner in crime, the 2014 Georgia Wrestling History Matchmaker of the Year, Mr. Andrew Alexander. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going well.
Excellent. Well, we've got a very special guest on the show this week, actually, and we're going to take the entire episode just to talk to him. We haven't had a lot of one-on-one interviews in a while, but a topic came up if you were listening to episode 10, our Roddy Piper tribute, where we also discussed the Hulk Hogan incident. The topic of racism in wrestling came up, and how, we really couldn't understand things because we'd never been in that position. We would never know what it's like to be a black man in the locker room. And so we wanted to bring someone who we thought was a friend on, who's one of the most popular athletes at Empire, and what I would dare say the most popular tag team right now in the Youngbloodz, especially coming off Crazy from the Heat in that amazing double hangman's match. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, a big, impressive specimen, the Big O, Octavius Black. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much, man. It's good to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
Okay. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, yeah, you sound great.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Andrew, any opening remarks that you wanted to make here before we get rolling? I want to talk a little bit about the wrestling end of things before we move along to the more serious discussion.
I've got some notes I wrote down to ask later on, but I think we could just start off. I asked Big O to be on the show just because two reasons. Number one, three reasons. Number one, he is a black man. Number two, he's very well-spoken, very intelligent, seems to have a good head on his shoulders. And number three, I just think that he's really a young up-and-comer in the area of the Southeast. I think him and Spoonie Mac have a huge upside as a tag team. I did debate having Spoonie Mac on as well. I just thought it may be too hard with having four people talking over each other and everything. But, yeah, these guys they've really impressed people. They've impressed me in the past year and a half. And, I thought maybe people would be interested to hear his thoughts on the matter and just get to know him a little bit better.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and honestly, as far as the whole Spoonie Mac, I think Spoonie's just fine with me representing the team as far as tonight. So, you guys can ask me what you want, and I'll do my best to try to answer the questions that you have, and I guess try to give you a little bit of my view on the matter as best I possibly can. Okay.
Hey, we appreciate that. That sounds great. That's exactly what we want, just honesty and a real discussion. And, have a little fun as well. So in that vein, going back to all the wrestling interviews that we've done here on the Midnight Black Mass, we've had veteran wrestlers and friends of ours from working on the road for over the years, just all different types of positions and stations in the wrestling business. One question I always like to start off with, though, before how you got started in the business, that's very cliche, and we probably won't cover that. I don't know that it's necessary. But what I like to ask is, what lit your fire as a youngster or whenever it was that the professional wrestling bug bit you? Most of us can go back to a certain moment in time that it was no turning back, that we were hooked from that point forward, and that was it. What would you describe that moment as?
Are we talking about just as a fan, or are we talking about deciding to be a wrestler?
I'd say that moment where you transition, like, from just a casual fan to this is an obsession of mine and something that I have to do.
Well, to be honest with you, at 10 years old, I was like, that was when I knew that there was nothing else. But I mean, wrestling was my love. It was like, man, I love wrestling. I had to watch it. I mean, that was back in the time, I would almost say that the golden age of wrestling. I mean, the mid-'90s where, wrestling was on literally every day of the week, and you could always turn on and watch some wrestling, and you hated it, hated it to be one of those days where, wrestling wasn't on, and that was really whenever I was like, man, this is the greatest thing ever. This is, but at that point, wrestling was such a cool thing. It was such a dream. It was like, man, I don't even know if there's ever a way to actually be a wrestler. Yeah, I would love to be a wrestler. I mean, my little brother and my cousins, they hated my guts because, that was what we did in the front yard, and I was the biggest, so they just kind of had to deal with it. But as far as me thinking, man, I could actually be that didn't happen until I don't know, I guess I was about 23, and actually it was another guy that I started with in Spoonie Mac. They were like, hey, man, I think you should come try this out. And I came to where they trained, and I was like, I'll see what this is about. At that point, I mean, I wasn't into wrestling as much as I was at 10, but it was like, man, I've seen this enough times. I was like, yeah, this would be fun. And I got in there, and I started rolling around, and it did come natural. And yeah, it took me a long time to be able to be where I am now. But I mean, as far as how it felt in the ring and moving and bumping and driving people into the mat, it was like it came pretty naturally. So to be honest with you, it was one of those deals where it's like, I loved this when I was a kid. I got an opportunity as an adult, and it was like, you know what? Now that I'm here and doing this feels right, and I never really got out of the ring.
Awesome. So, as a child, who were some of your heroes that sort of influenced you? And then also speak to, how you kind of fell out and then later fell back in love with wrestling more as you got involved in it, as far as some of the influences in the ring on you when you first started.
Believe it or not, I mean, some of the guys that I loved. I never really cared much for big guys in wrestling. I didn't. I thought they were kind of. To be honest with you, I didn't think they were very entertaining. I liked guys like Shawn Michaels and Rey Mysterio. I mean, back whenever I was a big fan, I mean, the WCW and the Cruiserweights that was kind of the hottest thing going for WCW before the NWO deal. So that was kind of what I liked. That was what I watched. That was those were the guys that I was like, man, these guys, the Eddie Guerreros, the Dean Malenkos, dare say Chris Benoit, but those guys were the guys that was like, man, these guys are on a different level than these other guys, and those are the guys that I thought, man, these are dudes to be watching, and they went on, to have, most of those guys that pretty much started the WCW Cruiserweight division went on to be huge stars later on in the WWE. But as far as me getting out and not really being a super fan as I was at 10 years old, it was probably, I guess, closer into the early 2000s when, I guess whenever the whole WCW being bought by WWE, I mean, at that point it was kind of, I don't know, I mean, I hated to see that happen because I was a WCW guy for all those years, and I hated to see that happen, and it was just like, man, you knew the WWE was on a different level at that time, and it was just like, man, so seeing that transition, seeing those guys from WCW go over there, and it's like, man, a lot of these guys, I don't think they're going to fit. Honestly, I think they get lost in the crowd. A lot of them did, and that was kind of when I stopped really, really watching wrestling for a while.
How long have you been in the business?
As far as me wrestling, 5 years, or hold up, take it back. I guess at the end of this year it'll be 5 years.
And how old are you now?
I am 28.
Okay. So just a little bit younger than us, and that makes sense with your favorites and stuff, knowing knowing you and seeing how you work and how you move. You're very athletic for a bigger guy, but you play it pretty smart. You don't do a lot of stuff that a guy your size just shouldn't be doing. Maybe occasionally, but just as a whole, a lot of big guys that are athletic want to do way too much and take big bumps for no reason and things like that. And that's just not a role that you should play. So what do you think, Dan? Do you have any other questions just about how we got going and things such as that?
No, I think we're good there. If you want to take over the discussion here and lead into this next part.
Well, I was very curious, and I thought this would be a good way to get going. And I should say before we start, we're going to be talking about something pretty serious, because when we did talk about the Hulk Hogan issue, we both kind of agreed that the reason that these issues are kind of still happening is because people just don't talk to one another about these type of things. So there's not a better understanding. We're kind of going to focus on racism in the wrestling business, and obviously everyone's different. Everyone has different opinions. Different things are going to have different meanings to people. But in this case, I think it's safe to say that Big O, you represent 100% of the black community in the world in this interview.
Okay.
All right. So no pressure.
All right.
So no pressure. Your answers we're taking as gospel.
All right.
But seeing that you're just a little bit younger than myself and Dan, were you a Hulkamaniac growing up?
There was a period of time where I think just about everybody was a Hulk fan. And to be honest with you, even though the controversy that has come out now, to be honest with you, it doesn't change what I think of Hulk Hogan. I mean, to be honest with you, he's iconic. To be honest with you, his name is I would say synonymous with wrestling. I mean, you don't when you see Hulk Hogan, you think, oh, that's that wrestler guy. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I was leaving work today, and I saw this guy driving in a pickup truck, and he had the exact mustache of Hulk Hogan. I turned and pointed to the girl I worked with, and I said, hey, there's Hulk Hogan. She busted her laugh. She said, it really looks like him. Yeah, man, I should go get his autograph. So, I mean, that name, that face, I mean, it's unforgettable. Even if you care about wrestling or you don't care about wrestling, you know who Hulk Hogan is. So, it's one of those names that, you never will forget.
Okay, that was kind of my second question, if it changed the way you looked at him. But let me ask you this. We all know what happened there and everything, but do you think that maybe the punishment was a little too stiff? Because he's kind of getting Chris Benoit treatment, and what he did was obviously bad, and he made a mistake, but I don't think it's on the level of murdering your wife, child, and then yourself.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it does seem that he's being made an example out of. But the thing is, we all make mistakes. We all do things that, man, you wish you had that back. If you had another opportunity, if you were given a chance to think about it a little bit more, you probably wouldn't have done whatever it was that you did. And the situation, I mean, is he really didn't think that he's necessarily doing anything. I mean, from what I heard of it, it just kind of seemed like, he's just talking. I mean, and yes, I mean, it's like he's being punished. It's almost like they're trying to. Well, I mean, it's not like they're almost. I mean, they're essentially erasing him from WWE's history when Hulk Hogan is one of the biggest parts of wrestling history. So it's like, we're going to completely forget this guy because he did something, he made a mistake. How many other wrestlers have made mistakes or done, just like that? To be honest with you, it does seem a little bit, a lot of it much, I would say.
It's not like wrestling is the most savory business, we were talking about that in the other episode. Do you really want to start peeling those skeletons out of the closet of everybody because you're...
I mean, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's... I know we're gonna be talking about racism in wrestling. I mean, but I think it's one of those deals where this is one sport I could say is definitely dominated by the white race. I mean, it's just, I mean, if we're calling it like it is with being real, I mean, so, if you want my truest opinion, I do believe that. This sport is definitely dominated by the white race. I mean, there's not a lot of, there's very few black superstars, wrestling superstars. I mean, you can pretty much name all of the greats on, one hand. But the sport's dominated by white people, and like I said, for this punishment, and like I said, the guy made a mistake, but I've met worse people. I've seen people that actually truly are racist, truly are prejudiced, truly are just bad people. It's like I don't classify Hulk Hogan as one of those people.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're right in maybe distancing themselves from him, letting it cool down, even maybe releasing him for whatever contract he had. But the whole just kind of erasing him and taking him off the Hall of Fame website and just things such as that, I just think that was a little too much.
Right.
So I wanted to get your opinion on it. So do you think because of the audio that was released and things that have been said, would you consider Hulk Hogan to be a racist?
No, sir. No.
Okay, so simply saying those things doesn't classify in your mind someone to be racist, and I agree. I don't think it does either.
No. I mean because there's racism and stereotyping and prejudice. I mean that's a thought process, and honestly, I'd almost even get to call it a way of life. I mean, it's how somebody truly is. I mean, but when you look at race, I mean, generally that's hatred or dislike for a certain race. And I mean, I just don't see Hulk Hogan as that guy at all. I don't see that in any way, and I never will. I mean, saying the N-word or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, heck, that say it, and it's just in fun. It's like, oh, hey, that's my friend. We're real close, so I sometimes say that because we're so tight that I can kind of say that. But even though, trust me, I don't love hearing the N-word, especially coming from somebody of that's not black. It doesn't make me think, hey man, that guy's racist or anything like that. I mean, if I started to see them act or treat a person that was black or a person of any race a different way, I might then think, okay, hey, that person might be a little prejudiced. If I saw them looking or acting a certain way towards a person of a different race, at that point maybe I would think that, but not for saying a word, not for no.
And he had quite a few people from his from Mr. T to George Foreman to Virgil. Right. He had quite a few people come to his defense and say Hulk Hogan is definitely not a racist.
Right.
Last Hulk Hogan specific question, unless Dan has one. Do you think it's possible that he thought it was okay simply because Booker T kind of invited him to the club?
I mean, from anything that I've kind of heard from him and him talking about the situation, I mean, he just seemed like, hey, man, this is kind of one. I mean, you think it like this. I mean, a lot of people are kind of unsure, especially whenever you're in a predominantly black area or venue, place, something like that. You're kind of, I mean, especially if you haven't been around a lot of black people before, you're kind of unsure on what you can say, how to say it, especially when everybody else is kind of just doing the same thing. They're calling, and at this point he just figured, well, I guess this is, I mean, I don't think he thought, hey, look, this isn't something because I actually heard him say it one time. I'm not sure, I guess in the interview he was talking about, I just thought it was okay, everybody else was saying it. It was just kind of one of those deals. So I just, obviously he felt like, I guess, hey, I'm cool with these people. They're cool with me. I know who I am. It's all, it's all fun. We're all having a good time. And that's just, that's obviously what he thought.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Dan?
No, I just the one thing he did touch on, and I guess we can kind of segue in maybe to another topic if you probably got something to say about this. But, you say that wrestling is a predominantly white-dominated business, and I would agree with that, absolutely. Interesting to point out that even a guy who had been accused of being a racist himself, Cowboy Bill Watts, as a legendary booker and promoter, would always feature black athletes prominently because, if you look at other sports, especially football, basketball, lots of huge black stars in those sports. And in the sport that's a work, you've had a small handful of black world champions. So, I don't think that can even be disputed what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because you look at a black professional wrestler that's been around for a while. They're typically over. They're not hated or looked at differently by the crowd, but still it still is very much. Look at black world champions. I think there's only been 3, one of which is The Rock, who is half black. I can't think of any outside of Booker T, Ron Simmons, and The Rock. I guess R-Truth and TNA with the NWA title, so I guess maybe there's a couple more. But that did segue. I was thinking, what do you think there'll ever? I don't know if I will say ever come a time, but it's typical when there's a black wrestler that's presented and featured on TV for the bigger companies. They usually have somewhat of a racial stereotype gimmick from either rapping or hip hop or dancing or the Nation of Domination, things like that. They're typically very, very they're caricatures almost of the black race. And guys who don't do that are, they're not as popular or as featured as much. Yeah. Just when you get a normal here's a black wrestler, he's just a wrestler, he's not shucking and jiving and doing all that ridiculous stuff. They kind of don't last as long. Do you think there'll be a time where that's not as real? Because I think that's still very real.
To be honest with you, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Like I said earlier, the sport is pretty much dominated by the white race. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. To be honest, there are several black wrestlers, and the thing that you get a lot of times with black wrestlers is athleticism. These guys, a lot of them look good, definitely look the part, are very, very athletic and can bring a lot of things to the wrestling ring, but I don't know, with black wrestlers, it's very difficult, and I would say like this, with this sport, you can't it's not enough to just be good. You know what I'm saying? You have to be better than just, okay, he's pretty okay, he's good. Because in a sport that's not dominated by this particular race, you've got to really, really stand out. So, it's not enough to just say, okay, well, hey, he's pretty good. He's all right. Some guys might be able to get away with that, but in a sport like this, it's a very unique sport. Definitely a unique business. You can't get away with just being pretty good. And the thing, if you're asking like as far as if it will ever change, it could change. But what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to just start seeing a overhaul of black wrestlers who could really, really go. Not just be able to really, really look good, not be able to just have tons of athletic ability, but be able to really go as a wrestler, to be able to really, really work and put on good matches. Not just, okay, well, yeah, he does that move and it's really, really cool. And then going past that, they've got to also be able to perform on the microphone as well. And that's kind of, I think, one of those things that's missing. If you go back and look at black wrestlers, if you're really, really critical, you've got some guys that, man, he was cool, he was all right, he was fine. I never really was an R-Truth fan. If I watch R-Truth now, if I watch R-Truth back in TNA, I never really was an R-Truth fan. But the thing is, like I said about black wrestlers that can really work, you're just going to have to see some guys that can really work. I mean, there's probably one guy that I can name, two black wrestlers I can name on the indie circuit that are coming up that I believe can absolutely go, and I could put them up against any other wrestler right now, and that'd be Cedric Alexander and Jay Lethal, as far as just guys that could absolutely go. But as far as seeing a time where you don't have to just be willing to do that semi-racial gimmick or, do that, perform that stereotypical gimmick that we see for a black wrestler, you got to see some guys that can absolutely go and make you forget, hey, that's just a black guy. They've got to be able to absolutely go in the ring and then also on the microphone.
Okay, that's a very good point. And I think the WWE, right now it's kind of just joked about that they seem to have more black athletes on the roster now than they ever have. But they've got a lot of guys that could fit that demographic if given the chance, especially with the WWE style between all three members of the New Day. The primetime players, I think Darren Young, I mean, I said it a while ago, I think that guy could be the next Rock. Not as good as The Rock, but I mean, this generation's, he's just so smooth in the ring. To me,
he's got some good stuff.
They've got quite a few guys right now that could be that if they could just break out from those stereotypes.
Right, and that's the thing. And the only way truly to really break out of those stereotypes is just being flat out good. It's like, The Rock was so cool. It's like you can't. I mean, even when he comes back, and you're like, well, he's not really a wrestler anymore. Nah, The Rock was just so cool. If he wasn't out talking you, he was out working you. And people talk about, The Rock can't wrestle. The Rock could go. Those times back in the day. I mean, those matches that he had with Austin. I didn't ever think Austin was a fantastic worker, to be honest with you. But those matches that he had. I mean, those matches were. You'll never forget those matches. You never forget some of those deals, Vic. You never forget the deal that he did with Hogan. The Rock was just so far ahead of everybody else that you couldn't help but him be the top guy. You know what I'm saying? Booker T, he was awesome. He was amazing, but he never reached where The Rock was. He never, and, even though, he was a world champion, he never held the WWE title, heavyweight title. So, but to get to the level where The Rock was, and I think that's what you're going to see. I see some guys who are just head and shoulders above everybody else on the show, everybody else in the roster. Because, it's obvious that WWE's not racist as far as not going to give a black person a job because, you can name 10 black wrestlers that are in the WWE right now. But, what are those guys doing to set themselves apart, to really get themselves over and really prove, hey, look, I'm not just a body. I can freaking go, and I can also keep the crowd's attention just with my words. And that's just, like you said, that's what you're going to have to see to really change. I don't want to call it a position, but, to really change where black wrestlers are as far as in wrestling.
Yeah, and go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was just going to say, you look at most any superstar, regardless of race, very few of them got over based on what the office wanted them to do, especially in WWE, because you have that, all the writers and everything else. You have many cooks in the kitchen as far as who's determining what's going on there, And so, The Rock, he got over kind of despite what was planned for him because they shoved him down everybody's throat as a babyface. And, of course, he went with the heel turn. He took a chance. But so a lot of guys seem to be afraid to take a chance. I do want to just give a little credit to the New Day in that respect, but not just because Xavier Woods is our buddy, but also just because, clearly that was something. And knowing he was very excited for them to do that serious heel group that they almost started there, and he was pretty disappointed when that didn't pan out. And so they took this, they give them, where they're out here like with a choir and shit, supposed to be baby faces, and the people turned on it. So instead of trying to force it down their throats like the office probably wanted them to, they went out there and they turned on it and got the heat, and now they've kind of turned it into its own thing, which is pretty cool. That's what you got to do to break out of the pack.
And that's right. You're right. It does mean taking a chance. It does mean, the possibility of this might not work. And I really do love, I'm glad you brought up the New Day, because, I've been thinking about them the entire time. But, I love what those guys are doing. And you're right. It started out exactly the same formula as the Rocky Maivia character. They wanted to kind of make it into this thing. We want to shove this down your throat. We want you guys to cheer for this, the positivity. We want you guys to cheer for that. And the crowd, and the thing is, that's not real. And nobody can get behind it. But then they go out there and they make a little switch, and then you see a glimpse of greatness, I would say. And all of a sudden, now look at where they are, and it's evolving into its own thing. And they look like they're having fun. And to be honest with you, I'm enjoying watching them work, not because they're black, because to be honest with you, I don't like Crime Time. I didn't like Crime Time, but I didn't like any of those guys. But New Day, they've definitely opened up my eyes and opened up a lot of people's eyes, because they're changing people's opinions of them every single time they go out there and work, and that's what it takes. As far as you being in a sport where there's not many of us in this sport, and not many of us get an opportunity for breaks, they have an opportunity to really push themselves as far as they want to go. It's just it's going to be on them. It's going to be on them.
Absolutely. Coming back to kind of you personally, you've been in the business almost 5 years. Have you seen or suffered from any type of racism?
Yes.
You have?
I mean, yes. Now, to be honest with you, I'm a big guy. That's no secret. I intimidate a lot of people. And, for the most part, people are going to be nice to me to my face. And I'm cool with that. I mean, but at the same time, I understand generally how people think. I could see how things go, and it's like I pay attention. Even though I'm not really difficult to work with, I do pay attention. So I mean, I understand if you do this, or if you do this, or if I keep hearing this about you, eventually I'm going to start watching and see if I see signs of that. And I definitely do see it. I mean, coming from the area that me and Spoonie are from, East Tennessee, it's a difficult area to be a to be a minority, to say the least. It's a difficult area to be a minority in the wrestling world, because the thing is, there isn't any others. I mean, I can tell you of probably 5 or 6 maybe black workers, and just guessing, 5 or 6 out of 200 wrestlers. I mean, that's not many. And the way these shows go, I mean, it's just kind of a thing. It's just how, a lot of these shows are built up on the good old boy system. So if you're not in close with me, you're not going to do a whole lot. If I do use you, it's only because I think you're going to bring me 20 or 30 more people in the door. But, you kind of know it's at a certain point. It's once you get to a certain point, you're not going to get much further. So, I mean, that's one of the main reasons me and Spoonie wrestle the kind of schedule we wrestle. We don't stick around a whole lot in one place. We know that in most cases there's not going to be that opportunity where someone's going to say, hey, look, we got these guys that we would like to take a chance on, and we're just going to we're going to give them this opportunity. Not saying that we haven't been given a lot of great opportunities. It's just I know it's a lot harder for us to get those great opportunities. And, it may not necessarily all fall on the booker or the shot caller. I mean, heck, it could also be the fans. But You guys have seen us work. You guys see that the fans gravitate to us very quickly. You know, we've come in. I remember the first time we came down there, and it was just like, hey, we just came down there to meet you guys. All of a sudden, we got thrown into a match, and you know, it was probably one of the worst matches that we ever had in our lives. But the crowd still was like, hey, you know what? Oh, this guy's, I like how they look. You know, they're wearing, you know, we were wearing like pink or something like that. And they just liked how we looked. So we came back. When I thought we would never get an opportunity to come back, we came back, and it was just like, man, we remember those guys. We like those guys. Boom. And, you know, it's kind of took off as far as us. But, I mean, it's like that just about anywhere we go. People like us. They like how we do. They like the stuff that we do. They think we're cool. They think we're sometimes innovative. So as far as why we don't get more opportunities to do certain things, you know, yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I believe race comes into it. I don't want to say names or anything like that, but I mean race does come into it. I know it does, and in certain areas it's way worse. You know, further north in Tennessee, I can only see it getting worse. Different areas towards Middle Tennessee, you know, like I said, I can see it being worse, but, you know, it's just one of those things that you know that exist. And for me as Spoonie, we just understand, look, we got to go out there and do what we do. We're going to go have fun for us. We're going to try to get better. We're going to put on a good show, and we're going to go from here to the next one. And that's how we do. You know, that's what the Youngbloodz are about. You know, we want to put on a good show, period. We know that, you know, heck, we may never carry the tag team titles on such and such show, but we're going to be at least that team that for a night or two says, man, did you see those two guys? God, they were something, weren't they? And that's kind of just that's our thing.
Well, I definitely hate to hear that. I think that's unfortunate because I think people are missing out on the big picture if they have any type of attitude like that. I mean, I know, you know, I would say it in jest, but I also kind of mean it when I'm like, let's book those guys. They're black, because I see the positive aspect of you're different. You're in a good way. You're different in a good way when you have this show that's, you know, you got 30 white guys. Yeah. They all kind of look the same. You know, get some variety. And you know, if you sucked, it doesn't matter that you're black. You know, we wouldn't use you at Empire, but you don't suck. Like you said, the first or second time you went out there, like, the crowd popped, and I was just like, man, they remember those guys and, like, they like them. And, you know, we did nothing special the first time they were there. Yeah. And it's always like that. You always get strong reactions. And it's not because you're black. It's because you go out there and you work hard and you give them good matches and entertain them. And that's what it's about. And so the fact that, you know, other promoters or whatever don't see that as a huge positive is just ridiculous.
Yes, I mean, it's crazy. And, you know, the thing is, like, well, you would think that, and you're like, wow, so they won't give them this because they're black, but they choose to keep, you know, they choose to keep using them. They want them on the show. They just, you know, only want them to reach a certain point. And, you know, you kind of alluded to this. It's like, it's smart for you to grab, you know, say like this, you're a businessman, and you're selling whatever you're selling. You want to appeal to everybody because you want everybody to come to your shop. So in order for you to get everybody to come to your shop, you've got to be able to offer something to everybody that would come by your shop to make them come into your shop and want to spend money. And that's kind of the way it is in wrestling. You want to be able to offer your show. You want to, other than women's wrestling, you want to be able to offer everything that you possibly can to get people to come in and watch your show. And, you know, as far as promoters, I mean, they're like, hey, well, you know, what's one thing we don't see in our crowd? We don't see a lot of black people. What are we going to do to get some more black people in here? Man, we need to find some black workers. And, you know, that's kind of how that thing is. I mean, so, yeah, it's a business. I mean, in the business decision, like, hey, look, you know, we need this, so we go get this. And that's, you know, kind of, I think, the mentality for a lot of promoters in the Southeast is like, well, we need some black workers so that we can get some black fans. And, you know, that, yeah, it is what it is, but I mean, you know, that's the truth. I mean, I've heard I've heard a wrestler who's been around for a long time and wrestled for some he's wrestled for WWE. I've heard him say these words to me recently. So.
You still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, we got just a few minutes left. I'll just throw out some quick questions, and you just give me a quick answer. Hopefully, be some entertaining things. But so the guys in the locker room, we give each other shit. That's just a thing. So, do you think that? I mean, obviously, this isn't something you just do in the workplace in an office. But do you think if there's jokes, racial jokes or racial slurs used in the form of just messing around, do you see that as oh my God, that guy's racist, I can't believe this, I'm never wrestling here again?
And back to what I said earlier today about, or earlier in the show about, how someone does or how someone, treats someone, that's how I would determine if somebody is actually racist. So it doesn't necessarily mean, you say something that makes you racist, but how do you actually think? Sometimes you can look at people. Sometimes you can look at people and you kind of tell, you kind of see it in their eyes, like, yeah, they don't care too much for my presence, and it's most likely not because I'm a really big guy. You know what I mean? So when it comes to jokes and hey, we're playing around, and I made a reference to the fact that you're black. No, I mean, that's not necessarily something that's going to set me off or set somebody of color off. But, when they
But sometimes it could go, sometimes maybe guys could take it too far to where it's just
it could easily be taken too far, because the thing is, just because I don't think somebody's racist doesn't mean they can't say the wrong thing to still set me off, if that makes sense. But as far as looking at somebody and saying, okay, this guy's racist, it would mainly be off me being able to see their character and how basically almost kind of reading them and saying, okay, this is how this guy actually thinks. He said this, but he actually really, really believes this. He actually really, really thinks that black people are beneath him. Or so, something like that. I mean, that would be something where I'd be like, okay, that guy's racist. But as far as, joking around in the locker room and, hey, if jokes can go too far, you say the wrong word, you say the wrong this, it can go too far at any time. Any joke can go too far. I mean, heck, best friends fight all the time because they joke around and the joke goes too far. You know what I mean? It's just it really kind of, as far as what you can say to somebody joking around, it just kind of depends on the person and what's said too.
Okay. Here's a myth you could maybe change, solve for us. Does the at the end or the at the end really make a difference?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this, because here's the thing, I'm not a thug. I'm not from the streets. I'm actually a country boy. My roots are in the country. Me and Spoonie, we live out here in the sticks. So to be honest with you, in the area that we grew up in, where you went to school and you were the only black kid in your grade, in the entire school, or heck, you might have just been the only black kid in your school. Generally, if you heard that word at all, it was a fight immediately. Didn't even care. It was a fight because, generally whenever you're the only one, it's almost like it's said to try to get a rise out of you. It's almost like, for you to say that, it's like you're trying to. Now, there's times where, that you see that the white person might be the minority, and he pretty much live and grew up with these people, so they're okay with him saying, as long as he doesn't say her. To be honest with you, you know what? I don't care for hearing the word at all. I don't care for hearing it. So if I do hear it,
that seems kind of like a real thing. Like the stronger you got that in there, it's like, oh, you motherfucker.
Right. I don't care. I don't care for the word. So when I hear it, it already tingles. It already sets me wrong. Now, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily going to attack somebody, but you know, I feel like this, if the wrong person says it,
is that for black guys too? If they say it, does it kind of make you like cringe?
It does. Whenever I hear the word, it makes me cringe. Because it makes me cringe. When I hear the word, it makes me cringe.
It seems odd when some guys will just, it's like they say it every other word. But then if someone outside of their race said it, they lose their mind, and it's like, man, you just said it 50 times.
You're right, and I hear that argument a lot. Like, well, they say it to each other, blah, blah, blah. I don't really use the word a whole lot. I mean, yeah, I did at one time. You know, when I was in college, I mean, you know, I thought I was cool. I was, you know. They let you
in college? See, that's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. That's a joke. Don't go too far.
I cut us off, but guys, we're out of time. The clock's about to expire. Big O, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to come back on the show anytime. Check him out at Empire Wrestling. For Andrew Alexander and the Big O, this is the Reverend. Keep 1 foot in the gutter and 1 fist in the gold. Good night.
This has been a production of the Potty Humor Network. Find us online at youtube.com/Potty Humor or subscribe to us weekly and never miss an episode by searching Potty Humor on iTunes or Stitcher. Thank you for listening and good night.